Okay, welcome everyone. This is the State Building Code Council. We're calling it a listening session for the work group on economic impact. Today we'll be focused on energy codes, and Dustin and I will go over kind of the structure of today and the intent. Dustin, and did we plan on taking role on this?
I don't think that we need to. We don't need a quorum, but if you want me to, I can.
I appreciate that. I don't think we will, because the way we presented it in a public meeting was the work group members are obviously welcome to attend. If they can't, the idea is we're collecting the information here, the oral testimony, and documenting that for review. And then in addition, we have the written testimony. So thank you for that. I'm going to go right into our introduction, if that's okay. Is that what you recommend, Dustin? Or did you want to go first? You're muted. I'll go through the script then. Okay. So for the record, my name is Todd Barrett. I'm the chair of the council and therefore the chair of the work group for economic impact. I'll be the moderator of today's listening session. Before we get started, I want to give an overview of how this listening session is structured. The State Building Code Council is holding a listening session for proposed rulemaking related to adoption and amendment of the 2024 Washington State Energy Codes. This listening session is specific to changes in WAC 5111C, the commercial code, and 5111R, the residential code. WAC is shorthand for Washington Administrative Code, the legal authority where state rules are codified. The proposed changes are posted on the listening session meeting page of the SBCC website. The SBCC is seeking additional input from the public regarding economic impacts resulting from proposed changes to the 2024 Washington State Energy Codes. Information gathered will assist the SBCC in determination that the probable benefits of the rules are greater than their probable costs. In addition, the SBCC would like to hear from small businesses on topics as the cost of compliance, including the cost of equipment, supplies, labor, training, professional services, and increased administrative costs, changes to sales or revenue, job creation or loss, and whether changes have greater impact on small businesses. Written testimony is also welcome. Please use the SBCC Economic Impact Questionnaire located on the forms page of the SBCC website to provide written feedback. We can review any of this if necessary. Send written comments to sbcc@des.wa.gov. Please use the raise hand function of the Zoom to indicate that you wish to give testimony. The moderator will call on participants in the order of raised hands. The listening session is divided into two segments. The first, from 1 o'clock to 2:30, is dedicated to commercial energy code provisions. The second, beginning at 2:30 and ending at 4, is dedicated to the residential provisions. At the division, a 10-minute recess will be taken and all hands will be lowered by the moderator. Hands raised after the recess will indicate your desire to comment on the residential provisions of the energy code. In order to ensure that everyone has a chance to make comments in a timely manner, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Staff will let you know when you have about a minute left to wrap up. Also, staff will let you know when it's been 3 minutes to finish up, so the next person can have their turn. Remember, you also can submit comments in writing either via email or postal mail. If you have scripts for today, comments, please provide that to staff to assist in getting accurate documentation of your input. And as a reminder, the listening session is for economic impact of the specific proposed rule changes. If you have comments about the 24 code adoption cycle, but for issues that aren't specific to economic impact of the proposed changes, please provide those to the staff separately. The meeting is being recorded.
All right, so that'll begin our listening session for the commercial session. We will now hear oral comments regarding economic impact of the proposed changes to the Washington State Energy Code for commercial provisions. For the record, please identify yourself and whom you represent, if any. Please speak clearly so we can get a good recording of your comments. In order to ensure that everyone has a chance to make comments in a timely manner, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We did receive a few folks who wanted to sign up for testimony, so we will go through that list first. And then if you're wishing to give testimony on the commercial energy code, please raise your hand and we will call on those folks in the order those hands are notified on the Zoom portal. First up, I'm looking for Corey Shaw. and I am not seeing them in the room today. Adam Hutchinson. Feel free to unmute and turn on your video if you wish.
There we go.
And I will put a little thing on the screen. Your time doesn't start just yet. Give me one moment. All right, your time is going to start now.
All right. My name is Adam Hutchinson, and I represent the Masonry Institute of Washington. Our members are mason contractors and union labor. Together, we build concrete masonry wall systems for commercial building codes or buildings across the state. We are here today to oppose Proposal 264. It would badly hurt our industry, and it wouldn't deliver the energy benefits that it's claiming to. Right now, the Washington State Energy Code allows concrete masonry walls with insulation in their cores to comply for only certain building types. Things like retail, warehouses, gymnasiums, water treatment facilities, and motor vehicle service centers. These are the exact buildings where the building owners really value masonry. Why? Because it's durable, it's fire resistance, and low maintenance. In our climate, adding extra layers of insulation to those walls just isn't cost effective. Proposal 264 would take away that exception entirely. Concrete masonry walls are unique. They're thermal mass, structure, fire resistance, and durability all in one efficient system. This isn't new. Past versions of the Energy Code recognize this and added in Washington state specific amendments because whole building analysis showed and continues to show that it works in our climate. And here's the key point. Nothing has changed. Masonry still performs the same. If anything, more studies, current studies, confirm that it's still a cost-effective, energy-friendly option for these building types. Our code already has targeted exceptions for other materials. Log and timber, solid timber walls are exempt because of their thermal mass. Wireless facilities are exempt because of insulation just isn't cost effective. Even glazing has other prescriptive limits that they can exceed. These exceptions are based on performance with practicality. Masonry belongs in the same category. And here's another option or issue. Washington doesn't yet have access to compliance tools like ComCheck that most other states use and designers are very comfortable using. Until we do, designers will continue to use these prescriptive paths to keep projects moving forward. Take the prescriptive option away, and masonry will also go away, and it will put them at a disadvantage. Lastly, the proposal neglects addressing other sections that would be affected by this code change. This code change proposal feels like just another attack on the masonry industry from just another party that has interests that don't align with the masonry industry. For these reasons, we urge you to reject Proposal 264. The existing code amendment, it has been tested, it's been proven, and it's been supported across multiple code cycles dating all the way back to 2005. Nothing in the building science or masonry performance has really changed to justify this. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Dustin, I forgot to ask before, so does it look like on our sign-up sheet we have time for just one or two questions from the council members? If
I think we have time for some dialogue between folks based on the signups and on potential folks in the waiting room.
Okay, I'm gonna call on Shell after I ask Adam. Can you repeat? It's 264, which is the mass wall, right?
Yes, that is the CMU mass wall exception that allows for integral insulated CMU to comply with the mass wall credits that are required.
Right. I just can't remember the number. Thank you, Adam.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead, Shell. And
Yeah,
when I ask council members if to ask the questions, please. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Todd. My question was about, my understanding is the hearing is about small businesses and impacts, and I didn't hear directly in your testimony. You may have implied it, but I didn't hear directly in your testimony how this impacts specific small businesses.
Absolutely. So the Masonry Institute of Washington itself only employs 3 people, as well as representing a lot of small business mason contractors throughout Washington, specifically the western part of the state. If this code change were to go into effect, we would see a lot less gym walls, natatoriums, things like that, where masonry just makes sense. So that would mean less masons working on those projects, and overall, I can't put the number to it. I would just need to look into that more further if we really wanted numbers to go with it.
Thank you. And Shell, just to clarify, this is both the cost benefit analysis under the APA and the small business economic impact under the Regulatory Fairness Act. So,
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Alrighty. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions from the council members for Adam? All right, seeing no
Great. Thank you,
hands.
Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Next on our sign up sheet is Shez Tucker. And I'm not seeing them in the room. If you are, please raise hand and unmute. Not seeing them. Next on the list is Jed Olofsson.
I see Jed. Welcome, Jed. Give him a second to unmute there.
Okay, I found the mute button, so we're all good now. My name is Jed Olofsson. I'm an owner of Johnston Construction Company in Tacoma, Washington, and a board member of the Masonry Institute of Washington. I strongly oppose Proposal 264 as well. These changes would drive up construction costs without delivering measurable energy savings to the building owner. At some point, stricter codes no longer produce reasonable payback. And for masonry walls in our climate, that point has been reached. The proposal would eliminate the use of integrally insulated masonry block walls, forcing builders to add unnecessary layers of framing, insulation, and finishes to the inside or outside of the wall. That erases masonry's proven benefits, the durability, fire safety, VOC reduction, and resistance to mold and mildew, while wasting energy in manufacturing other products and costing owners unnecessarily. There has been no change in masonry performance to justify this policy. What will change is the economic burden on small business like mine and the jobs that we provide. This proposed change will impact on the effectiveness of the building, the limited number of buildings affected by the current provisions. I respectfully urge you to disapprove Proposal 264 and preserve the current effective code provisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jed. Any questions for Jed? Seeing no hands. The next one on our list is Chris
Jed.
Ivy. Chris Ivy. I see Chris online. Chris, if you're with us, please unmute. All right, we'll move on from that one. I'll do a call back for the folks that we missed. That's the end of our signups that we received before the meeting. Looking for Corey Shaw. Not seeing online. Looking also for Shez Tucker. I'm not seeing online. I'll open it up to the rest of the group. If you want to raise hands to comment on the provisions of the Commercial Energy Code and Economic Impact Cost Benefit, and also impacts to small businesses, please raise hands and we'll call on the order that they come up. We have Gavin.
Thanks, Dustin. Gavin Tenold here, representing the Washington Solar Industries Associations today. Speaking on behalf of our installer members, most of all of whom are small businesses. Well, we have participated in this code for two code cycles now. WASIA is very concerned about Proposal 187 insofar as its limiting of the requirement of solar installations on commercial buildings with areas of slopes greater than 212. This greatly hamstrings our industry's ability to keep jobs, keep people employed, and continue to do the important work that we're doing. Additionally, this code proposal creates a transfer to affordable housing projects, which WASIA has not really seen a demonstrated result of that working yet. So just wanted to flag that for council members present here today, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin. Any questions from the council to Gavin? Michelle.
Yeah, Gavin. Thanks for your testimony. Do you have a sense of how often buildings are at the 2 and 12 that you mentioned? And then also if you had a number on the number of solar installers, small businesses in the state, that would be helpful.
If it's okay with you, Jill, I'd like to follow up with written comments answering those two questions for you. We just became aware of this opportunity to comment late yesterday, and I have not had a chance to look into that.
Okay, sounds good.
And Gavin, that was 187, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'll call. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, just wanted to voice support for the code that was the draft of the commercial code that has worked its way through the technical advisory group and MVPE committee. I've worked in several states in different energy codes, and I think Washington has some of the more robust requirements around doing economic modeling. It requires like specific spreadsheets to be filled out, it has like pretty specific inputs that are required, allows technical advisory group members to review those proposals ahead of time. I think that what we encounter is like, a pretty common issue around a split incentive where sometimes folks who are building the buildings aren't the ones that are operating the buildings. So, there's a increased cost on some energy efficiency measures that actually show payback periods over the lifetime of the building, or decreased cost from society, either in like a reduction in the amount of grid that has to be built out, or on health impacts of cleaner air, or on reaching climate goals. And I feel that the code and the technical advisory group process has done a decent job in past cycles and in this cycle and trying to address all of those. Being a TAG member, I was in support of the proposals that I saw that went through, and appreciate you for giving that time to speak today.
Thank you, Johnny. And since we have a little time here, maybe we can kind of do this all together, Johnny, Greg, and Dylan. Can you help us understand this proposal a little bit? We'll go back and revisit it, but tell us a little bit more in the context of the cost and benefit of this proposal.
I wasn't speaking of any particular proposal. I was speaking of the proposals that went through the technical advisory group.
Okay, let's come back. Let's see if Greg, maybe you can help us here, and then we'll get to Dylan.
I wasn't going to speak on this specific proposal, so you can come back to me after.
Okay, Dylan.
I can talk a little bit about like AC to heat pump replacement standards if that's helpful.
Okay, so am I hearing there are no other questions or comments on 187?
I believe so.
Okay. Thank you, Gavin. We look forward to your written testimony. We'll help unpack this. So then let's go back to Greg. You were in front of Dylan there.
Yeah. So first off, I was going to ask a question and make this more conversational. What's the deadline to submit written comments?
So we're going to be trying to deliberate on these for our CR 102 filings at a work group economic impact meeting next week. I'd like to try to get as many written comments in by end of business on Friday so that I can get those up for the meeting next week. But we will continue to take comments throughout our comment period on economic impacts. And so the final deadline for any and all comments would be November 7th at 5 p.m.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Greg, just to put a little more on, because we've really studied this. We have to hit an economic impact, small business economic impact, submittal for the CR 102 on October 1st. But obviously, we're going to consider everything after that before the final adoption vote or potential amendments or mitigation that could have to happen through the public process after it's filed.
Oh, perfect. So, and I'm not going to speak today either for nor against any proposal. I mean, I didn't read that as being the desire of this meeting, or at least my interpretation. Rather, I was trying to help SBCC get accurate cost benefit analysis and small business economic impact statement data. And so I emailed the preliminary one that should be in your inbox, Dustin and Todd, of a list. And I've been going through the commercial code and trying to identify gaps. So I was kind of saying, where do we not have accurate or incomplete cost benefit analysis, and where do we not have any small business economic impact statement stuff? So I emailed you 8 pages of, and I was referencing the sections and the proposals and all that stuff for all the gaps. Being that I just got the notification on Friday end of day, so I didn't get to start working on it till this week. It's, I mean, it's a bad scramble. So I'm only probably about 90% done with the commercial, and then I'll jump into the residential side for getting that. But already I can just tell you as a summary of what I'm finding is small business economic impact statement is mostly non-existent for all the changes throughout the code. This includes the integrated draft, and it includes all the proposals, the petitions. And then as for the proposals, what I'm finding is, and I'm limiting my scope to those that are increasing costs, so if they decrease costs, I just ignore them, or if they're just clarifying requirements, ignoring all that as I go through. But items that cause an increased cost burden, no matter how great or small, I am finding the overwhelming majority of the data in the petitions is incomplete. And so people in various degrees. I mean, some are better than others. There's a few that are more complete, but so I just kind of highlighting that there's I was a little surprised, even when I was going back and reviewing the data on how scant the info is and how incomplete that is. So just highlighting that now that I'm realizing that we really need someone to go in and third party or someone, which I don't have a solution for that.
I appreciate what you are doing, Greg. And so I do have that in the inbox here. We'll add it. We'll be deliberating on that information. And if you can supplement that at all, much appreciated to have that coming in.
And that's really all I had. If you had any questions, I'm happy to answer questions or so.
Appreciate joining. This is additional forum to collect information and potentially have this two-way dialogue here. So thank you for joining. Let's go to Dylan, please.
Yeah, thanks so much for making the opportunity to hear from us about the economic impacts. I work with the Sierra Club, specifically on building decarbonization. I just wanted to speak in favor of specifically the AC to heat pump replacement standard in the proposed commercial energy code update, and just kind of emphasize how solid this proposal is, and specifically how much economic sense it makes for businesses and commercial buildings across the state. We know that replacing central air conditioners with heat pumps is kind of the most opportune moment to transition existing buildings to high efficiency electric alternatives to gas and to kind of conventional electric resistance heating. And so we think that, yeah, this makes tons of sense. There are economic analyses showing that there are on-bill impacts and that the upfront costs are negligible, especially when considering state, local, and soon to be gone federal incentives for heat pumps. So yeah, I just think that there's many cities in California that are currently adopting AC to heat pump reach codes right now, and a pretty extensive economic analysis that's been done in California that I'd encourage the State Building Code Council to look at if there is any questions about the economic concerns. That economic analysis basically shows that there are favorable on-built impacts in almost every climate zone in California, and we could expect that to be true. I think even more so in Washington, where there's much more affordable access to electricity. So yeah, thanks so much again for considering my comment. Appreciate it. And yeah, strongly support the energy codes as a whole, and specifically want to speak to the benefit of AC to heat pump in meeting our state's climate goals while doing so in a way that preserves affordability and makes economic sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. We'll go to Johnny, please.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know I already spoke, so I appreciate you giving me another opportunity here. I just wanted to respond to one thing I heard Greg talk about, and around the integrated draft. My understanding was that rules that are incorporating based like information or referencing changes based on national consensus codes or established industry standards is exempt from requirement of doing an economic analysis. And the integrated draft is taking the 2021 Washington State Energy Code, which did go through a thorough P&L economic cost analysis with a consensus code, which is exempt from it. So I don't understand why that integrated draft would be required to do an economic analysis. It feels like it's kind of a step in the process, just in order to create a code from which the TAG can then put together proposals from.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. I think I'll hold from responding. I want to think about that a little bit, on what falls under the exemption and what doesn't. Go ahead, Greg.
I'll just going to note my understanding, which maybe others can weigh in also, but my understanding was that exemption applies to all the other codes, which adopt it by reference, and then we adopt WAC rules to do amendments. But the energy code's different in that the entire energy code's printed in the WAC, and we're not accepting we're just cherry picking out portions of the energy code and adding it to ours, and then we subjectively change it a little bit when we try to modify it. So my understanding, that doesn't apply for how we do our current code. If we were to do the same thing as we did with the other model codes, then we could get by that exception, but I don't believe that applies for how we do things. But maybe others can weigh in with their understanding.
Okay, we're opening up a good topic here, so we're going to go to Patrick, then Chill.
Yes, thank you. This is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington. I'll start off with the general comments I'll make on the commercial side. I want to start off by saying I appreciate the efforts by staff to improve the process and compliance with the APA and the RFA. With short notice and lack of clarity in these meetings, it was really challenging as stakeholders to prepare our members and help get you the kind of response you'll need to complete the small business economic impact statements. I just kind of want to say, this may not be a perfect example of the quality and quantity responses you can get from affected businesses, but I think with better planning and coordination in the future, we can greatly improve that process. So don't discredit the questionnaires or surveys and listening sessions if you feel like you didn't get the information that you were hoping or needed this time around. The opportunity to provide qualitative feedback can be very useful when done well. I think we've seen potential for that with proposed changes made to EV charging requirements for the IBC this cycle. However, it's important that outside of these meetings, the SBCC gets good quantitative data for their analysis as well. This is required for the impact statements and necessary in particular for the cost-benefit analysis for the energy code. We would echo some comments before and caution against the SBC solely relying on data provided in proposals. The quality and accuracy of the estimates vary widely, and they don't use consistent parameters from proposal to proposal. Some proponents, I think everybody tried to do their best. Some have, more experience in energy modeling or hired third parties, so theirs was maybe a bit higher quality. but not everybody was able to do that. Many proposals had revisions, and the original estimates likely do not completely reflect the finalized versions from the tagging committee. I think the tag tried to do what they could under the constraints, but ultimately the CBA is an important gate for the council to ensure that all proposed changes from the proposals and other changes done by the committee or the integrated draft will be cost effective for the market before final adoption. I'll say I've heard from some multifamily builders who are interested in providing impact. Because of the short notice, I had to focus on preparing our members on the single family residential side. So I'm going to keep working with the multifamily to provide you some feedback, hopefully through the questionnaire by Friday. If not by Friday, then by Monday for the meeting that got scheduled. On the topic that Greg brought up, hopefully I can provide some clarity. I know for kind of our process, we always assume we think of the changes as tied directly to proposals when you get really into the SBCC process. But the APA deals with the rulemaking as a whole. And the rulemaking as a whole is going to look at all changes that you make to the WAC. Most of those come from proposals, but some come from the integrated draft. With the other codes, they are a model code adopted by reference and amended. So most of the WAC is just the inserts, the small sections of the code that you're changing. Our energy code process is a little bit different, even though technically it's heavily based on the IECC. All of it is put into the WAC. So any significant non-editorial change you make, hits those APA and RFA thresholds. And so if there's any significant changes we make in the integrated draft, or if the committee makes to the WAC for this cycle compared to what it's currently been, those need to be included in the CBA and the Small Business Economic Impact Statement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Okay, Jill.
I wanted to respond to the last couple commenters. I understand at this point in the code, some are setting the stage for challenges later. This is a volunteer organization, and we've done the same thing before, and we're doing the best that we can. And I hope you can appreciate the effort that's gone into what we've done thus far. The TAG members reviewed the proposals in their entirety and discussed the cost in some cases when it was merit or reached merit. According to the TAG members, all TAG members were allowed to talk and bring up whatever they wanted. Suggesting that we redo the entire process over is not really useful at this point. The RCW that because Patrick and I had an email exchange about this earlier. RCW says, with a couple of dots for extraneous things, rules adopting without material change national consensus codes that is generally established industry standards if the material adopted or incorporated regulates the same subject matter and conduct as the adopting or incorporating rule. The interpretation that the council has made thus far is that each code proposal is an individual rule. For the interpretation of each code proposal as an individual rule, what we are doing with individual CBA and small business impact statements, we're interpreting each proposal as a rule. RCW clearly states that the rules without material change from national consensus codes are not subject to these. Therefore, proposals from the national consensus codes are not subject to these things. I'm sure we'll have more discussion on this, but I wanted to provide my viewpoint on the last two commenters and what they suggested. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, John. And we appreciate all comments. Yes, we can talk about process on these meetings. Really the intent is we, have identified the process that we believe meets the statutory intent and leads to the best determination by the council, the best achievable determination. And so that's what we're here for. This is an extra opportunity to have this dialogue about both content and process. So we welcome all comments. But obviously we're focused on getting towards that Sierra 102 deadline, knowing that is the filing that then leads into the main public process and hearing. So it's not the end. Okay, thank you everyone for that comment. So we're at the end of the commercial list. We've taken some additional comments. We have almost an hour left before we've scheduled the residential code. First of all, I'll ask, are there any other commercial comments? Go ahead, Greg.
I appreciate your take, Chell. I mean, that's why I said I wanted others to weigh in. So, I mean, I appreciate, I don't know the answer. I mean, I have my interpretation. Aside from that, I would want to note that I don't think it's appropriate to impugn other people's motives. I was volunteering my time to go try to help you guys make your process the best possible. And so I just want to note that my motivation was helping you guys identify what, I mean, to make it the best possible. So I can't speak for others, but just wanted to note that.
Yeah, I appreciate all the help you've provided, Greg. You've been really instrumental in setting up the codes as they are in the draft form. Appreciate all that.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for those statements. Okay. Seeing no other requests to talk about the commercial code, now we're obligated by the agenda to come back at 2:30. We will take residential comments at that point. I guess the question before us right now is, are we willing to accept some residential and document those if someone would like to do that so that we don't keep all testimony waiting till 2:30?
I would say if there's folks here who are here to comment on that we can do that and differentiate. I do see one guest unmuted, but they don't have their hand raised. So I guess we could call for IRC, or not IRC, I'm sorry, Energy Code Residential Provisions,
Okay.
economic comments.
And just to state it again, we are coming back at 2:30 as published to make sure we don't miss anyone who's waiting for that time period. But if you'd like to speak on the residential code now, we'll make sure that gets documented. Okay. Well, if we have none, the best path forward is we can monitor. We will stay online and monitor. Is that right, Dustin?
Yeah.
Knowing that we're likely taking a break until 2:30, correct?
Yeah. So in other scenarios similar to this where we've had some dead air, we've paused the recording and monitor for hands to come up, and I can modify what we have on screen here to call for the hand raise if they wish to give some testimony, and we can monitor until then.
Okay. Okay. If everyone understands, thank you all for participating on the commercial energy code, and we will see those back that want to join the residential energy code at 2:30.
All right. I'll pause the recording now.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm connected.
All right. Go ahead, Hoyt.
Oh, I just was a little bit late. That was all. I was just going to say, sorry, I was late. So.
Oh, no worries. Okay. Well, right now we're in a break, waiting on folks to raise their hand to give us some comments on economic impact. So thank you for joining, and I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording, and we'll go back to waiting around a little bit.
When to go?
You should be good to go, Hoyt.
Okay, I just wanted to add something on this. Having a small business myself, doing building code reviews on this with Clarity Consulting Engineers, and also a full-time employee at the city of Tacoma who's on this. But this is speaking for myself. A lot of the cost stuff they're talking about on energy code costs. One of the things that I think that gets forgotten is cost recovery. too, for the people that actually have the stuff. The energy code costs, sometimes there's a little bit of cost up front. And then if you look at amortization over time, you get cost recovery on this. And a lot of times that cost recovery is actually going to the person that actually either purchased it or is leasing it or all that stuff. They're saving that cost. And I think a lot of times that gets forgotten in these procedures. Energy code costs and stuff is going up and up and up over time. And the Washington State Energy Code, I believe, is going in the right direction by making things more energy efficient, finding different ways to be more energy efficient, coming up with different things. And I just wanted to say that I think our state should continue to go in this direction. And as running a small business, which is just two of me doing it as a consulting, I have some costs on the energy and stuff, and those costs in the office that I have, it's nice to have more energy efficient stuff where that cost over time actually goes down. So that was something I wanted to make sure that doesn't get forgotten. It is true that sometimes there's an upfront cost, but that upfront cost overcomes over amortization over time. And it's we should be looking for the state of Washington, what's good for the whole time for the state of Washington for a business to be operational, and not looking at just the cost of the initial procedures. And the nice thing about the energy code that I like right now is we're actually getting results of how buildings are being built energy efficiency by doing the blower door test and some of the other stuff, not only just doing other energy stuff. And we're able to make better scientific decisions on making more energy efficient buildings. So that's what I wanted to talk. And that also includes energy efficient housing, residential, multifamily, things like that. So that's what I wanted to add on that. So hopefully that was clear.
Thank you, Hoyt. Are there anybody else in the room who would wish to give some comments? It's 2:16. We have about 14 minutes left in the time dedicated specifically for the Washington State Energy Code commercial provisions. If there's room in the residential provisions, we'll allow comment on commercial provisions at that time. Seeing no hands coming up, we're going to pause the meeting once more and then look for hands to come up, and we'll resume recording. All right, we have about a minute left. Last call for comments on the Washington State Energy Code commercial provisions. Please use the raise hand function if you wish to give comments. Katie, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I was thinking about this and just kind of more like a question. Given that there was some sort of legal questions raised about the statutory interpretation of what needs a cost benefit analysis and what doesn't, would it be worth asking Dirk to take a look at that? Or since we've already sort of done that before, are we all pretty settled on that?
We can definitely follow up with Dirk on that. We've had, preliminary discussions on that topic, but hasn't been sealed shut.
Okay, just wondering. That way we might seal it.
Yes, I understand.
Excellent, thanks.
You're welcome. All right. It is now 2:30 and the time dedicated to the Washington State Energy Code commercial provisions is concluded. I'd like to thank everybody who has turned out to give comments to the SBCC for economic impacts. The listening session will recess until 2:40, and we will begin the listening session at that time for the Washington State Energy Code residential provisions. Thanks again. We're on recess until 2:40. Let's see. All right. Welcome back, everybody. This listening session is divided into two segments. The first, from 1 p.m. to 2:30, was dedicated to the commercial energy code provisions. The second, beginning now and ending at 4 p.m., is dedicated to the residential energy code provisions. Please use the raise hand function of Zoom to indicate you wish to give testimony. The moderator will call on participants in order of raised hands. Just as a reminder, this listening session is for economic impact of the specific proposed rule changes. If you have comments about the 2024 code adoption cycle, or for issues that aren't specific to economic impact of the proposed changes, please provide those to staff separately. We will now hear oral comments regarding economic impact of the proposed changes to the Washington State Energy Code residential provisions. For the record, please identify yourself and whom you represent, if anyone. Please speak clearly so we can get a good recording of your comments. In order to ensure that everyone has a chance to make comments in a timely manner, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no hands up, I'll call for folks wishing to give comment on the commercial or the residential energy code provisions. Please raise hands. Hoyt.
Yeah, this is Hoyt Jeter, to give comments on the residential energy code. As forecasts have shown in history, the growth of population in Washington that's continued to increase, which is going to have more residential people living in Washington. Because of that increase of the population that has been shown, that is continually growing in all statistics that I have seen, people are using their homes for the residential more and more. Also, people are using their homes more for working out of their home. There's also have provisions now where they have accessory dwelling units that in the city of Tacoma, where it's going to be possible where some of these units are going to be rented out. Because of that increase of energy uses that is shown that's going to happen in the future, as the residential code is getting where it's getting more efficient, it's actually having testing that's required, showing that people are able to meet the compliance that they're showing now and also see increases in the future, that they'll continue to be able to build structures that are able to meet the energy code that they're requiring for the future. I believe based on that, the adoption of the energy code, which does get inputs from other people, to continue to show more energy efficient homes and address the ways as much as possible to save the energy for the residential and to continue to increase that. And I wanted to be in support of the energy code constantly being able to meet, I believe, the provisions for the energy efficiency that we have in the state law. I can't remember top of my head. I apologize on that. So I wanted to say I am definitely in support of the energy code being done and increasing the more efficiencies over each cycle that is being submitted. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Hoyt. Any questions for Hoyt? Hearing none. All right. Any other folks present in the room who would like to give comment on the residential provisions of the Washington State Energy Code? Dylan Plummer.
Yeah, thanks again for the opportunity. These will be fairly similar to my previous comments regarding the commercial update, but I want to voice, first of all, our support from the Sierra Club, Washington chapter, and the national organization for both of these code updates, and for both commercial and residential energy code updates. And I want to specifically name our strong support for the residential air conditioning to heat pump replacement standard. This is a critical measure in order to decarbonize homes in Washington State while saving residents money, and doing so at the kind of most opportune moment for a household when they're replacing their central AC. to avoid them, purchasing an AC and then having to make the replacement later down the line if their furnace breaks. Because we know that heat pumps provide both cooling and heating, and thus offer greater bang for the buck, as well as operating at efficiencies far higher than conventional air conditioners or gas furnaces or electric resistance heat. I also just want to note, like I mentioned on the commercial code, that there have been pretty extensive economic analyses done around air conditioning to heat pump replacement standards in California. The codes and standards team at the California Energy Commission has done very in-depth analysis looking at rates and climatic zones in the state. And these are much less favorable conditions than in Washington. And these analyses still come out showing pretty significant on-bill savings, with some communities saving up to multiple hundreds of dollars a year when switching to a heat pump. And then I just want to also note that if we're going to meet the state's climate goals, it's critical that we're transitioning quickly and that we're creating long-term plans. And with an AC to heat pump requirement, it provides us a long on-ramp to making the transition, which will in turn help us to not only reduce emissions, but save money and avoid having to take more dramatic measures as we get closer to the kind of target dates for emissions reduction. So in conclusion, I just want to voice again our strong support for the entire package of codes for both residential and commercial, and just repeat that we believe these codes make not just environmental sense, but economic sense for businesses and for Washington residents. Thank you.
Joe.
For the record, I think he was talking about proposal 19 in the residential.
Kevin.
Yeah, I was curious for the previous speaker that mentioned something about conditions in California were more challenging than Washington. What conditions would those be?
Just that there's higher electric rates in California, so we would expect lower savings in California than in Washington, where we have an abundance of very cheap energy.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dylan? All right. Any others in the room wishing to give comment on the residential provisions of the Washington State Energy Code, please raise your hand. I'll give that a moment. If we don't see any hands come up, we will pause the recording and come back online when we see hands. Ann Anderson.
Yes, hello. Thank you. My name's Ann Anderson. I was on the residential tag committee as an alternate. I'm a structural engineer and I have a small business in Vancouver, Washington. We are also doing UA energy calculations. I'm also involved in code development with the IRCB for 3 cycles now. The one proposal that I am prepared to talk cost benefit on is number 18, electric readiness. I think basically it's all cost and no benefit. Electric readiness doesn't really affect energy usage. It's basically outside of the scope and intent of the energy code. The intent of the Washington State Energy Code says this code shall regulate the design and construction of buildings for the effective use and conservation of energy. And so contrary to this, when you're forced to put electric wiring into a home that doesn't need it, that already has, say, a gas appliance, you're not, there's no energy benefit. So this doesn't belong in the code. And in fact, in the model codes, it was put in during 2 code cycles. It was voted in and then it was appealed. And the board of ICC took it out of the codes because it didn't meet the scope and intent of the code. So I would urge you not to put this in to our code. Thank you.
I'm happy to respond to that if the chair is okay.
Go ahead. Is that Johnny?
Yes.
Yeah, Johnny Co-Chair with RMI. I'm the proponent of that proposal that was just spoken about.
Can I ask a question for you? Maybe you'll go over your responses. So, and is the argument that because you can't achieve immediate benefit from it, that we have to establish what the time frame is for that benefit for it to in the cost benefit analysis?
Right. It doesn't directly affect the energy use of the house. So you're having the home builder put in something that is not needed. It's sort of it's a futurized, you're putting a what if thing into the code. What if they remove the gas appliance? Then they'll need the electric wiring. So it's not typically done. So it doesn't, how do you even do a cost benefit analysis if you can't determine how much energy it's saving?
Okay. And so I was trying to wrap my head around. So can someone guide us on precedents?
Yeah, so Washington would not be the first state to do such a thing. I'm thinking through on future decarbonization goals of the state. Other states such as Colorado, California have adopted codes that have required electric readiness as a part of a greenhouse gas reduction strategy, preparing for zero emission appliances in the future. It also saves money for future installations because they won't have to upgrade electrical panel, add conduit, pull wire, if all of that is ready to go. And I've mentioned this to Ann before during the TAG meeting, but during the IACC process, the electric readiness measures were moved to an appendix during a late rule that occurred, a late appeal that occurred during the board decision of the IACC. Even after appeals had been rejected by the appeals board, there was a decision by the ICC board to move this out of the base 2024 IECC, which means this would have been put into the integrated draft. At least most of it would have been put into the integrated draft. And instead they moved it to an appendix. And if the intent was that states or local cities were not to adopt this because it's completely outside of the energy code or is not meant to be a part of the energy code, then the ICC board would not have moved it to an appendix and instead would have just completely removed the language. The fact that it was included as an appendix means that there was an intent to make it available for cities and states to at least consider, which is what we're doing here. I will say that that version didn't include space heating. That was only water heating, cooking, and dryers. We did include space heating into the Washington code based off of language that we've seen for the Illinois stretch code, the PNNL model code language that they put out for their electric readiness code briefs, as well as the California language, all went into educating the language they put in for the electric readiness on the space heating side.
Thank you, Shiny. Dustin, go ahead and moderate if you like.
Okay. Gregory Johnson.
Yeah, maybe just a little refocusing. Instead of my understanding is we weren't supposed to be arguing for or against provisions, but we were more supposed to try to get the cost benefit analysis and small business impact kind of added in the code and get that correct, or for the CR 102. So for this one that everyone's talking about, would it be worthwhile to actually note the immediate energy savings, and then if there's any projected future savings, put that also in there, because I mean, I think what Ann's mentioned correctly is there is no immediate energy savings. And so, I mean, just make sure we denote that in there and then denote what the cost is. Would that seem appropriate?
Well, yeah, Greg, I mean, I think that's what we're trying to unpack, right? Is ultimately a determination has to be made by the council on the cost benefit analysis, and I just don't know the energy side as well of what the precedent would be on that consideration of life cycle costs, so forth. I'll give an example. We've just been through the deep dive on EV chargers, which is maybe in a similar space. It's looking at the future benefit of that, and we had to establish on our own what we thought was defensible in a 3 to 5 year asset capitalization on the investment by the developer versus then a 10-year threshold of certain technology, so forth, and then a 20-year long-term planning, right? Now, that's one example. I don't know what, on the energy efficiency side, how people think about those timeframes.
And I can tell you other petitions that I was reading through when I was mainly on the commercial side, there were a few other petitions that actually noted they had zero energy savings and they had some cost. And so, I mean, there would be precedent to note that in there. I mean, if that's the case, then that's the case. That doesn't bar us from accepting and doesn't or denying something. I mean, there's other reasons. But I mean, just being honest with what it is, regardless of what it is, would be probably, I would assume, useful for the council in making an informed decision when they come down to the CR 103 vote.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. Kevin Dwell.
Oh yeah, and I realized I didn't identify myself earlier. Kevin Dwell with Northwest Natural. Just following on with what Greg said, I guess there would have to be some estimate or projection then of when a consumer or a homeowner rather would in fact change out their appliances. And I'm guessing if it's new construction, probably 20 years, when the appliance fails, that would, at that point, you could start counting savings. Or I'm just throwing out numbers here, but just and riffing off what you said, Todd, if there's a benefit to be gained, it's going to be in the future at some time. Thanks.
Johnny Butcher.
Yeah, this is a tough one because it's basically how are we setting up buildings for the future and what are we projecting will there be a fuel switch in the future or not? Based on the Washington State energy strategy, building electrification was shown to be the least cost way to decarbonize the building sector in Washington. So setting up our buildings to allow for electrification, if they choose not to do that now, is a part of a strategy in order to find the least cost way of doing so. So assuming we're following the state energy strategy, which was released in 2021, and electrification is the chosen building decarbonization strategy in order to reach the climate goals of the state, then the cost of adding in the electrical infrastructure at new construction is between 3 to 4 times cheaper, according to the research that was included in the proposal that I put together. If you have a deferring opinion on that because you don't agree with the results of the Washington State energy strategy, then I can understand why someone would not agree with that logic. Unfortunately, that's where I'm coming from when I submitted that proposal. So the cost is, in addition to the operational differences that would occur starting at year 18 to 20, like Kevin rightly pointed out, when there is a fuel switch over, there's also specific costs associated with whether or not that electrical infrastructure is there for you to be able to do that fuel switching in the future and reducing that upfront cost, or I don't even know if capital cost, I guess, would be in the future.
Thank you, Johnny. Ken, did you have something you want to say? I saw your hand up.
Yep, not any longer. I appreciate it though. Good.
All right, you're very welcome. All right, any other questions, comments in relation to proposal 018 for electric readiness? Chell.
I think what was suggested is reasonable to there's a first cost of proposals. There's obviously an energy savings that is associated with proposals. And then there's future cost savings that would be after the first cost, but would accrue to homeowners at some point. I think it's reasonable to bracket it that way. I think that's what Kevin and Greg were suggesting.
I think this is a good one. We'll, if we didn't state it clearly, we will have another work group on economic impact likely next week, right, Dustin?
Monday next week.
And one thing we are trying to do here, in addition to collecting this information and making sure we're flagging those that probably want a little more discussion. So thank you for the comments. Go ahead, Dustin.
Wait.
Yeah, one of the things, Hoyt Jeter, principal engineer, City of Tacoma. One of the things that I think is a problem about when they say electrical readiness, it's not well defined how it should be done. And I think the State Building Code Council or our state building code should actually get into a better definition of what should be done. Still not as clear. I get lots of questions on it. Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? For the future stuff. I think that is one thing that has caused problems on the permitting side that we've been dealing with some of this stuff on the energy. So when these things for the readiness, it would be really nice if it was somehow either did some kind of hierarchy or did something that says what you need to do. Do you just want to have conduit being pulled out throughout the wall? Do you want to actually have it ready to where it can actually wires are already pulled through, whatever. That's probably one of the most difficult things that I've had to deal with explaining to people when it says readiness. What is the readiness? Do you just want to have a plug-in where you could plug in a generator or something and that's it? Doesn't have to be hooked up to anything or do you want to have a box that's put into that has the future readiness, but nothing in there yet? It's just, there's a lot of different opinions or different things that on dealing with this that I don't believe is clearly spelled out as well as it can be.
So sorry if I may interrupt. It's an interesting comment because in some ways I understand what that we are thinking of this more as a performance requirement or some sort of requirement that doesn't have an exact prescriptive solution, you're saying. So even if we had some sort of guidelines or example solutions, right, that would be helpful to kind of come to some sort of consensus for building officials on what an acceptable solution is.
Yeah, and it's similar to like one of the things they have, just to give an example of similar, when they talk about accessibility, you got to spend 20% on accessibility on buildings, sometimes for existing buildings or things like that. They have some stuff you have to do. And this obviously is not existing. This is new construction, but it'd be really nice to say, this is what you need to do to meet this future goal. And whatever that is, I'm not saying I'm telling you what it should be. I don't want to go there. It'd be nice if that was really laid out really well for us for the future, because we're saying doing these things. And is there a cost benefit analysis? Well, sometimes a cost benefit analysis is actually having a system that can, and I'm not saying this is the way to go, but let's say, for example, liquid natural gas facility, even though that's a different thing, but being able to have that you could switch to liquid natural gas really easily with a few things to do. And please don't correct that as that's what I'm saying to do. This is electrical, but something like that. Hopefully a task group could come up with that. So
thank you. Wait, Gregory?
I was just going to say, as the electrical engineer on the tag, that Johnny did a good job of actually defining all that. So that is well defined in his proposal. There's no ambiguity of what electric readiness is for that specific proposal, which will make the cost benefit analysis and the SB EICS a lot easier to calculate the upfront cost.
Thanks for that clarification.
Any other comments, questions on number 018? Anne, I see you're still unmuted. Any comments back to the conversation we just had?
Sure, just one more. I mean, I'm a pretty literal person, and so it seems like the code is not about futurization or readiness of anything, and so it's like where would that stop, this readiness idea? So it just seems like it doesn't belong in the code, and the ICC doesn't think these kinds of things belong in the code as well. So
Katie Sheehan.
Hi. Yeah, I'm kind of putting my building manager and property owner hat on here. But I'm kind of, this is if the everything was static, I completely understand with what Anne is saying, but looking at the clean building performance standard and how that's changing, I can't think of something that would make me more upset than knowing that the requirements were changing, and then in 20 years, something that would have cost me dimes on the dollar, to change over was in people's minds. It's like we have to consider that we know that this is happening. So, I need to read that, those definitions. But just as a property owner, not myself, but the company I work for, we're looking at those compliance standards and going, if somebody had been able to lay a little bit of line down for us, 20 years ago, we would have been saving a lot of money now. So, and recognizing that, is it dimes on the dollar? I guess that's the question that I'm kind of interested in. So.
Thanks, Katie. Wait.
Yeah, just to add on that, one thing, we do design for future stuff in structural design. For example, when you're doing the dead load for a roof, you add in re-roofing for that, even though the roof isn't there, but eventually that building is going to be re-roofed. And so when you do your seismic design and your gravity design, that's typically in the dead load that is actually used in that. So there are cases in the code that is designed for the future that may or may not, that the building may never be re-roofed. But every engineering calculations that I've got here at the city of Tacoma for every commercial, and even there was some residential, multifamily and stuff, they've always included an additional dead load on there, which affects the seismic and the gravity loads. And they've also, I just wanted to say it has been done before. So then I think this is appropriate to do it in this too. So.
Thank you, Hoyt. All right. Good discussion. Anybody else have comments, questions on economic impact for proposal 018 for the residential energy code? Does anybody have other comments on the residential energy code economic impacts? Patrick Hanks.
Yes, thank you. Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington. We are the largest trade association in the state, representing all of residential construction. I'll I'll repeat some of the comments I made for the commercial energy code first, and then get into stuff specific to the residential energy code. Appreciate the efforts by staff to improve the process and compliance with the APA and RFA. With the short notice and lack of clarity on these meetings, it was really challenging to stakeholders to prepare our members and help get you the kind of response you need to complete the small business economic impact statements. So this go around, it may not be a perfect example of the quality and quantity of responses you can get from affected businesses, but we think with better planning and coordination in the future, we can greatly improve the process. The opportunity to provide qualitative feedback can be very useful when done well. I think we've seen potential for that this cycle. However, it's important that outside of these meetings, the SBCC gets good quantitative data for their analysis as well. Regardless of where these proposals came from, whether from different organizations, they're now part of the SBCC's rulemaking, and they're responsible for providing the cost-benefit analysis. The SBCC, we'd caution against heavily relying on data provided in the proposals. The quality and accuracy of the estimates vary widely, and they all use different parameters. Some proponents have experience in energy modeling or hired third parties. Others were not able to do those things. And then revisions came in, and so oftentimes the original estimates don't reflect the finalized versions that we're looking at today. I think that TAG tried to do what they could under the circumstances, but this is an important gate for the council with the CBA to ensure that proposed changes will be cost effective for the market before final adoption. And we'd really encourage, if you're not able to do that energy modeling in-house, to get third party done for that. One area I want to highlight for the small business economic impact is that, we believe the full cost of compliance is often underestimated. Builders have to learn and get trained on new changes in the entirety, not just any one specific proposal. They have to buy code books, insert pages, or pay for license. Then they can have to spend time navigating the code specific to each project. Businesses may also cover these costs for their employees. Over the life cycle of the code, these individual costs add up. So it's important that the impact statements try to estimate those costs. The SBCC needs to consider the effect the energy code has on minimum housing construction costs, which affects the feasibility and affordability of new housing in Washington. We're in a housing crisis, and 80% of Washingtons cannot afford a median priced home. The code pushing electric heat pumps over other heating and cooling options can increase both construction costs and operational costs over buildings using mixed fuel heating and cooling options. These changes not only continue from the current code into the proposed changes, and they get worse with certain proposals. Electricity prices are also going up and will likely to continue to do so with increased demand and regulatory costs. We've primarily directed our members to provide you feedback through written comment for the impact statements. We believe that's a better option to protect their confidentiality and then to try to avoid antitrust issues. So hopefully you'll see some stuff in that. We'll continue to send out the questionnaire to our members. But for the CBA, I wanted to highlight several proposals that we think the benefits do not outweigh the costs. For proposals 018, 015, and 019, these all penalize or discourage fuel choice and add unnecessary costs. They do not directly improve the energy efficiency of a home. A majority of Washington voters voted last year to ensure energy choice in the codes. And even though I-2066 is going through legal review, the SBCC should still listen to voters and prioritize meeting their statutory goals without restricting affordable energy choice for consumers. Those are choices that people can make if they want to save costs now or spend more money up front and try to predict where the market and regulatory environment will be in 10, 20, 30 years. But don't tell people how to comply with something that may not even happen. The UA changes in Proposal 036 and in conjunction with the committee change to maintain the 15% cap on glazing in the UA alternative are going to make it harder and likely more expensive to achieve credit option 1 in R406 and make it more challenging and expensive to comply with R406 as a whole. Proposal 010 heavily restricts design without achieving energy efficiency benefits to make it worth it. 034 will also likely heavily restrict design, and initial discussions with builders, it may cause unintended effects for typical housing designs. 014, 008, and 012 are all going to increase compliance time for the relevant projects, which may have a larger cumulative effect for compliance costs of builders. I just wanted to flag that for you as you do your work on the small business economic impact statement. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today.
Thank you, Patrick. That's very helpful information. Gregory Johnson.
Yeah, I just had a few questions. One was when you get different disagreements on what the cost impact is in the comments you're collecting, how do you guys intend to deal with that? Do you guys intend to publish like a range, or just note that there's a difference of opinion, or do you have any insights on the plan?
As we approach that, I think it's going to be discussed heavily at the next work group of economic impact meeting on Monday. But I believe the best way to move forward on that's going to be to publish a range or showing the, differences there. But I don't have a super clear way that that'll be presented. But want to represent both perspectives, though.
Okay, and then next, thank you. That's a great answer. I like the range. And then on something that I've heard spoken, I'll quote Tim Atterbury because I've heard him say the concern over the aggregate cost when you include all of them together. I don't believe you have to have that for the CR 102 necessarily, but for the preliminary cost benefit analysis. But for the final cost benefit analysis, is there any plans to kind of do a aggregate overall cost of all the measures together and include that before the CR 103 decision?
I think that we can attempt something like that, but I think that that's outside of the scope of what we've got planned at the moment. I think planning for that in the future would be good. But right now we're approaching the changes to the codes in a granular manner. And so the aggregate component, I like the idea, but I don't think that we have the resources in place to execute a aggregate analysis.
Okay. And then last question I had was, if I'm not mistaken, you guys were going through a third party, trying to get a third party cost benefit analysis, and maybe it's halted in contracts. But do you have any status update on that? And then when we might receive data? I'm just kind of trying to gauge if we're going to be getting any preliminary or final results from that prior to the CR 102 or prior to the CR 103 or prior to the comment period.
So preliminary data from that contract is anticipated to come in mid-November, prior to CR 103, but then at least prior to CR 103 final adoption by the council, which is anticipated December 1. The final product of that report will come out and be included in the filing of the CR 103.
So does that mean, so the comment period for the CR 102 would end in November, you said 7th or?
November 7th, yes.
So if that final report from the third party comes in after November 7th, would there be any ability to extend public comment so that way people can comment based on that?
As far as the public comment period, and there is room to extend public comment period to potentially include comments relative to that. The timeline that we're on right now, filing CR 102 for October 1, puts us at those November 4th through the 7th are the earliest possible days we could do public comments. We can extend out a little bit, but we then start having holidays looming in the face of trying to do business, and we're trying to keep the final business from those holiday weeks as much as possible. So we can definitely entertain an extension of comment period to entertain results of the contracting that we got going on right now.
And my request would be that mainly on the written comment. Doesn't necessarily have to be verbal comment later on, but if you were to extend written comments, that'd be very helpful. Anything that could be, even if it's not summarized, if there's a way to get that comments posted prior to the CR 103 decision.
Okay.
Gregory, thanks for that. And Dustin, my memory's slipping on when the record was closed in the past, and maybe we'll just bring it offline and discuss that.
Well, traditionally, the record closes on the day of the last hearing. With our
okay.
Yeah, with our statute requiring two hearings, one for group one for group two in both sides of the state, we are planning 4 days of hearings to accomplish that. We don't have locations fully identified just yet, but likely going to be in Spokane for the east side, and then the east side, and then the west side, we're going to be in Olympia at the Jefferson Building. But we could have those hearings then. We could potentially push those a little bit. But when we make the filing of CR 102, we have to have our locations and dates nailed down for testimony to end. That way it's clear in that filing. So we can discuss it as part of the work group of economic impact and make a decision and make a call at the council meeting here this month.
All right. Yeah, I agree. Great, thank you, Greg. We'll take that offline. We'll bring it back to next week to the public meeting.
Any other comments on economic impacts for the residential provisions of the Washington State Energy Code? Ken Morgan.
Hi there. Good afternoon. My name is Ken Morgan. I work for Gensco, the local Northwest HVAC distributor here. So we represent quite a few brands of heating and air conditioning equipment, gas furnace brands, heat pump brands. And I just want to make a comment or just something for the group to be aware of. When we're talking about replacing an air conditioner with a heat pump, that situation's typically when an existing gas furnace is there. And I just, excuse me, want to point out that with new AHRI testing and rating standards in the change in refrigerant here more recently, there are not a lot of heat pump add-on coil-only options available in the industry today. So that might be something that changes in the future, but those coil-only add-on heat pump systems are very few and far between in the marketplace today. Again, that could change in the future. We're starting to see that, but just want to note that for the group.
Thank you, Ken. Chell.
Yeah, question for you, Ken. What are you talking at the residential level and add-on heat pump is one where you add it to a gas furnace to provide the first stage of heating? Is that what you're talking about?
Yep. Yep.
Kevin Dwell.
Yeah, question for Ken. So, if there's a limited number, are there other complications, or are those limited numbers driven by other things like, besides manufacturing availability, like physical size or pressure drop requirements, things like that?
Yeah, those could all come into the equation of application, but just meeting the federal minimum to be an AHRI rated system is proven to be very difficult for manufacturers right now. So if you do have that scenario where you're trying to add on a heat pump to an existing gas furnace, you actually have to follow a more difficult rating pathway through AHRI. So it's not to say it's not possible. There's just a lot more limitations for those types of systems.
But just a follow-up question, I'm guessing that might, in some cases, lead to because of the requirement to switch from AC to heat pump, you might have to replace your heating and cooling system, not just the cooling system. In other words, get an air handler and abandon your furnace.
Potentially. There is a pathway through HRI where there are still a number of full system ratings, meaning a heat pump with that furnace coil and a new gas furnace. So that follows a different HRI testing procedure, and there's many of those systems available to purchase today.
Oh, okay, cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ken. Can you or others, does this, for those of us less familiar with the current amendments coming through, does that relate to a specific amendment or change this cycle?
It's difficult to follow, but I believe that was the Sierra Club's. I don't remember exactly which amendment that was. Honestly, I looked at the supporting documents attached on the agenda, and it's tough to follow which.
Okay.
Number 19.
So 19?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to highlight it so when I go back and do research on it.
Calling for additional comments on the residential provisions of the Washington State Energy Code. Ann Anderson.
Yeah, just because it doesn't sound like there's a lot of input. I'm new to this process in Washington State and to this whole economic issue. And this was brought up during the commercial, and Patrick went over it, but he talks so fast. I'm wondering if there's going to be any cost benefit analysis done for the significant changes that were done in the integrated draft. Like, for example, the U factor for walls went from 0.056 to 0.045. Will there be a cost benefit analysis of that?
I think that we're still discussing with our council on what is specifically required and what the interpretation is on the flow of that information from the model codes over to the energy code. Should there be a cost benefit analysis on it? I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but we're still exploring that option, and so I don't have an answer for you just yet. But we're discussing it.
Thank you.
And can you help me a little bit? Are you saying the 0.45 was a state specific amendment, or that was pulled from a change in the IECC, for example, but then brought into an amendment? When you mentioned the model code, I wasn't quite clear if you meant that was.
Right, it was brought in from the 24 model code, but at the same time with that particular issue, the kind of the associated section, which allowed for a 0.06 U factor when you do super efficient heat pumps, that section of the model code was not brought in. So that, like, the picking and choosing, it wasn't really complete in my book. So there's going to be a substantial cost to this.
Okay. Thank you. And just for my records, can someone identify that proposal number? I'll find it.
I don't think it is a proposal number. It's part of the
integrated draft
comments that it came through on the integrated draft.
Gotcha. Thank you. That was the point of the comment. Thank you.
I guess if anything, it would be considered a tag proposal or recommendation to incorporate that into the draft code. Greg Johnson.
I just want to make a plug for SBCC staff made a integrated draft report, which you'll find very useful. That highlights what staff flagged as significant changes. And so that's one good way to go through, and I'll give you the sections and what changed. It doesn't capture everything, but it captures probably about 90% 5% of what was changed in the integrated draft. So that's and I plan to follow up this week with a list of gaps for the economic small business economic impact statement, and also for the cost benefit analysis, just like I was doing with the commercial.
I really appreciate that, Greg. Chill.
I appreciate that, Greg, as well. And if you think that was omitted, you could submit during the CR 102 process the piece of code that was omitted that you mentioned. I think while this is kind of contributing to the CR 102 process, this isn't, you making that comment isn't officially part of the CR 102 comment period, is my understanding. So if you wanted to make that comment, you could do so between October 1 and November 7th.
I think that's an accurate statement, Shell. And I have received a couple comments from folks who wish to register them as comments for the comment period. So if you had something ready right now, we could intake it and couch it until we're ready to review those comments. But we don't have a bunch of them at this juncture.
I think I've advised similarly, so I hope that's the case.
All right. Any other comments on the economic impacts of the changes resulting from the residential provisions of the Washington State Energy Code 2024 edition? If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and we will call your name. All right, I'm not seeing any hands come up. We'll stay on here for a couple minutes and see if anybody pops on and make another call, and then we'll pause the recording and hold until the people raise hands or the end of the meeting comes upon us. Ann Anderson.
Yeah, I just want to take this advantage of having all you here. We're just sitting here, so I'll have another question. Well, what was my thought? Okay, so since I'm new to this again, you're collecting information on what some of these proposals are costing. And so is your plan to use the information we as public people provide you will use that in your cost analysis? What are you going to do with this information? If I were to go to the effort to on some of these proposals to figure out what they're costing in as far as equipment or labor, services, that kind of thing, what do you do with that?
So that information will be, filtered down and distilled to represent into different proposals, presented to the work group of economic impact, and then via that conduit up to the council to help inform the decision on how they vote to move stuff towards CR 102, to file the CR 102, and then also ultimately to how they vote on final adoption. So if you were to go into the effort of providing that information for the SBCC, one, you'd be a pioneer in the code change proposals that we've got going for the SBCC. This is a process that is not necessarily new to the state of Washington, but the SBCC is embarking on measures to improve the process and getting the good qualitative data and quantitative data that will help inform decisions hasn't been sought in a very tenacious manner. We feel confident in the stuff and stand by the decisions made in the past, but we are also trying to improve the process for the future. So, it'll get included as part of the record, and hopefully it is a relevant data metric that can sway the vote of a building code, so without it, we don't have the information to really consider these things. And so we're really just trying to get the information and make better decisions that, we feel good about standing by in the future.
And so, oh, go ahead, Todd.
Oh, well, thank you for the question. And what I would add is ultimately, yes, it's trying to lead to a up-down vote by each council member, but also potential mitigation, to that proposal if it's possible, right? So we still have time in the CR 102 process to, if it's possible, to amend the amendments and mitigate that concern. So just want to add that it's up, down, or let's propose the changes.
Yes. And this is a little different than how it ran in the 2021 process, where the council took the proposals as, so we have the reports that kind of inform how the tag does its work to make changes to the codes. The council voted in the 2021 process to move them towards CR 102. Staff drafted all of the economic impact statements. There was not this process in place to discuss the input and content of those. And so then those were filed with CR 102. And then most of the economic data was used in the determination of the CR 103 final adoption votes. And so I think that we're trying to bring that economic consideration a little bit earlier into the actual process. Is it all crunched up in time right now? Yes. But I would like to see that expanded in future cycles.
Thank you.
All right, it's 3:38. We haven't had any new comments on economic impact for specific proposals. We're going to go ahead and pause the recording. Please use the raise hand function. Staff is monitoring the room to see if hands come up. And if your hand comes up, we'll start the recording and call your name, and you can give some comments and have some dialogue. So until then, the recording is paused. Okay, Ann Anderson.
Yeah, just one logistic question. When you have the meetings in November at the locations, will it all be in person, or will people be able to do Zoom? Will you be in
hybrid.
Zoom? Hybrid, okay.
Yeah. So with the challenges of having them on the east and west side of the state, certain staff will be at one meeting and probably not the other one, as we'll be traveling to get over there. But we'll have in-person availability in Olympia at 1500 Jefferson Street. And then on the east side, if we can't find another location, we're looking at probably the Regional Event Center in Spokane Valley.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right. That concludes the time for the residential provisions of the Washington State Energy Code. This listening session is being held to gather input on the economic impacts of proposals for the Washington State Energy Code, both WAC 5111C and 5111R. Information gathered today and through written comments will assist the SBCC in its determination that the probable benefits of the rules are greater than their probable costs. If you have written comments, please submit them to the SBCC staff at sbcc@des.wa.gov by Friday, September 12th, to be included with meetings materials for the work group of economic impact meeting Monday, September 15th. Written input will continue to be accepted until the close of the comment period in November. On behalf of the SBCC, I want to thank everybody for participating in this listening session. And this listening session will stand adjourned at 4 p.m. or 4:01, I should say.